What's going on, everyone? Welcome to the Invested in Hockey podcast. Today is December 5th, 2024. It's episode 39. My name's Anthony Santini. I'm joined here with
Eric Wilson.
and a very special guest today. We are joined here with Andrew Murray, a very big hockey fan, very big OV fan too. He wanted to actually hop on and talk a little bit of the Four Nations Faceoff. Finally, last week's episode, we did talk about who was going to be named to this team. This week, we find out who was named and a lot to discuss too, because we feel indifferent about a couple takes here. But before we get into that, what have you guys been up to this week? I know, Eric, you had a little bit of a week off with school, so you've been hanging out a little bit more. But yeah, what have you been up to?
Yeah, I've had lots of fun. I actually got to go out to Stick and Puck today and pretty much just play hockey on a nice pad of ice and rip it up. So a couple blisters here, but what is that? You gotta have something to show. So fun week for me. How about you, Sanson Murray?
I mean, I've been chilling, dude. I've been pretty much hanging out. I have a little bit of homework to do. I'm getting into that today. And then, yeah, reading week's pretty much started. No class tomorrow, which is pretty elite. Me and Murray have been grinding the new Black Ops 6, which has been a lot of fun. New Zombies map comes out tonight, or today even, too. So I got to get ready for that. That's going to be a big tilly. And we're actually headed to Square One tonight to watch the Packers and Lions game. So that's going to be a lot of fun. So that's pretty much what I got going on. Murray, what have you been up to, bro?
Yeah, pretty much the same thing. Black Ops 6, gym, and then just sports. Life of the unemployed guy on the job hunt.
Hey,
Hey,
you're a
it's all right.
stud. You're a stud. You've been working this week as well, actually. You were a nice designated driver for myself for 2 days, so I'll give you the courtesy of that. So, but yeah, appreciate you guys. Appreciate you asking, Sense, and it seems like it's been a good week for us.
Yeah, pretty sweet too. Even for fantasy wise, I know me and Eric are going at it right now in a big fantasy matchup, and I got a lot of injuries that I'm dealing with right now. So we'll see if this franchise could persevere. We're used to being up against the wall here, so we'll see what happens. But before we get into more fantasy talk, let's start out with our rosters for the Four Nations Faceoff. So still a couple months away from the Four Nations Faceoff, but I know that we are looking forward to it. I wanted to start off backwards a little bit here. So just pulling it up, we're going to start off with Finland, and I'm going to pull up the roster for those of you that have not seen it. So can you guys see everything now?
Yep,
Yeah,
yep.
looks great.
Okay, perfect. So for Finland's roster, I don't know if there was any standout players that I think didn't make the team. For me personally, I think Patrik Laine was a little bit of an interesting take considering he's been injured for a while. I thought there were absolute locks in net. That's a great three options that they have. I think Saros is going to start borderline all the games. Maybe he'll play against Sweden, but he should get the nod against Canada and the US. Was there anything, Murray, that you noticed?
I was just very happy for Kevin Lankinen, a guy that didn't really have a job coming into the season, and now look at him. He can represent his country in the Four Nations face-off. I doubt he'll start a game, but still got to be nice for him to rep his colors.
Yeah, you didn't even think either that he would be the starter for Vancouver when he came in. We all thought it was going to be Seelovs. It should have been, and Lankinen's just been unreal. I know, Eric, you mentioned last week about how you think that Heiskanen's only trending up. What do you think about this defensive core in Finland?
I mean, yes, Heiskanen's that big guy who I'm not sure who exactly is going to play with him. I think it's going to be Ristolainen, but I think he's going to have to lead the charge, and I think this is like that next step for him because we never really have seen him, haven't seen him much at that international stage outside of the World Juniors. But I'm excited. I love the line A pick there too, and like you guys said with Lankinen, a guy who's just been hot, and even when he loses too, it's always it seems to be a close game for those Canucks. But yeah, it looks like a pretty good roster. Even getting some size with Yoel Armia there as well.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I mean, definitely not the strongest rosters of the four, but when you look at it too, something that stood out for me too was the depth down the center for this team. And I think that having Aho, Barkov, Granlund, and Anton Lundell is going to be a pretty good four. But when you're facing against a fourth line center, someone like maybe if they have Anthony Cirelli or Braden Point playing center, it's just very tough to go head to head when you have players like Anton Lundell. Even I believe, do they have not who's the fourth liner for the US? Would it be maybe Brock Nelson, a very talented player as well. But I just think the depth of this team is pretty good, but I don't think it's going to be able to sustain some of the talent on the Canada, US, or Swedish teams.
Well said about the depth. I don't think I think they made it look as good as it can, especially with grabbing your two defensemen from Utah Hockey Club there. But it's going to be really interesting. And like Andrew mentioned a few minutes ago, I don't know who's going to get the start come game one, but you kind of have to imagine at this point that Luukkonen and Saros get at least one start each. I don't think you're going to see all three round robin games going to one guy.
Yeah, definitely. I also like how, like you said, they gave like Yanni Hockenpah like a spot on the roster, a guy that's been suffering through a lot of injuries. Hasn't looked the best this so far on the Leafs, but still gets the chance to represent his country. So I'm happy for him too.
Yeah, I agree too. I mean, even with Hawkenpie, I believe the stat is he's only played 2 games so far in the last 365 days. I believe is the stat. I could be wrong, or if it is this year, I might have misheard it. But even still, he struggled with his injuries, and coming into this season, he wasn't even supposed to have a contract with the Leafs. There was a weird discussion going on opening of free agency day. Did he sign the contract? Did he not sign the contract? What's going on? But at the end of the day, he's a very good player, and when you relate him to some defensive defensemen that also play on the other team that we will get into, examples being Colton Parayko and Travis Sanheim. I think that Hakanpää is a really good pick for this Finland team. Any other last minute notable takes for Finland?
I won't. I don't have any more notable takes, but remind me to go back to one word, and it's the word cups. But we'll get back to that later because it's we're gonna have to move to some other teams before we talk about it.
Yeah, sweet. All right, so where do we all have? I'm gonna say that we have Finland finishing last unanimously. Is that a fair take?
I actually have them finishing third, and we'll
Okay.
get to who I think is going to finish last.
Nice. Okay. Cool. Is
Oh,
there any reason why you think maybe they're goaltending or anything for Finland that could really stand out?
I just heard in Line's interview, he said that he didn't like their odds to win the
I
tournament, and
saw
they have
that.
something to prove. So I think they're all feeling a little disrespected, and I think this roster still has a lot of talent throughout. So I'm excited to see how they perform.
Sweet. Okay. I have them at fourth. Eric has them at fourth. Murray has them at third. And I do agree that I think they're a little bit underrated. They all are good NHL players. And we're going to get into that next here with Sweden, where we open up as the roster was announced yesterday. And the first thing off rip that I noticed right away was Victor Arvidsson that made the team. That was one of the biggest surprises for me. He's a player who I didn't think started off the year well at all. I believe he has only 2 goals this year, so it's been a very, very slow start for Victor Arvidsson. I do think, though, that this team is pretty underrated. I think they could be a sleeper for me personally, especially when you have Gus Bus, Philip Gustafsson in net. Murray, I know that you have him in fantasy, so what do you think? Do you think Philip Gustafsson is going to play the bulk of the games? Because Eric, you have Jacob Markstrom, so you guys are basically on opposing teams here.
I think US, I mean, Sweden has like similar goaltending to the Americans in terms of any one of those guys could like outperform the other two and become the starter. Like, I can't say any one of them is going to be the starter. I actually think all three of them will play a game based on, unless someone gets hot and off to a hot start. But like Markstrom, Gustafsson, and Allmark I think they're all three proven goaltenders that, with their respective teams in the NHL, have shown that they're the number one guy.
I can agree with to what you say there, and unless let's say Sweden, has like a nice 4-0 win and one of the goalies has 26 save shutout, then I don't think you can really go back to him. I think you got to give each guy a shot, like you said, because once you're into that, actually, I was looking. There's no semis, so again, you have such a small opportunity to be perfect, and I think it's hard to play a goalie 3 times in that 6-day span or whatever it is, right?
It can be challenging too. I think personally that I'm gonna have Gustafsson as my starter if he were to get the nod in the last game. I think Gus Bus is the guy, but either way, Markstrom or Gustafsson are the two options for me. With Allmark not very much behind, I think they're all good goaltenders and a very, very slept on goalie trio I think Sweden has in this tournament.
100%.
So looking at the forward group here, I know that there was a couple names that we are seeing that didn't get selected. William Eklund was a big name that Eric, me, and or sorry, you and I have collected his cards. We've looked at, we've watched him. Big overtime winner the other night, and he was not selected for this Sweden team. What do we think about Eklund not getting selected, but still giving the nod to a young player like Leo Carlsson?
You see, like I had Carlson being there, and I was so happy when he was selected, just because he was one of the first picked. I think once Hedman hopped on that Sportsnet episode, they kind of had Carlson as one of the first picks, and I was excited to hopefully hear Eklund's name. But then, you know, seeing Arvidsson called over Eklund was kind of my like my breaking point there. I really agree with adding Gustav Nyquist because of the bit of like veteran presence there, but I think that adding Arvidsson doesn't make a lot of sense at this point. And then Eklund has deserved it all season long. He's on pace for a career high. He's red hot right now, on pace for around 70 points right now. It's just disappointing for me. I know I have the bias of liking Eklund and you as well, but it was tough to disagree with the other selections. I'm sure you kind of agree looking at some of those really good picks, including like Rasmus Anderson there.
Yeah, for sure. Murray, what are you looking at here?
I mean, I think Arvidsson probably deserves a spot just looking on how his career has gone, and he's always been a very effective presence on the front end. But I don't like Gus Nyquist on this team over Eklund. I think Gus Nyquist hasn't done any. I haven't seen a Gus Nyquist highlight in quite some time. Um, I don't know. I don't think he's done enough. He's an older guy. It's confusing because it seems like they wanted to go with his older presence, but then yet, like you said, Leo Carlsson's on the team, who
Yeah.
arguably I think Eklund's done more to earn a spot than Leo Carlsson too. So,
Yeah.
um,
I'll
it
chime
is
in
very
here
confusing.
too. I'll chime in quick because he what Gus was on the highlight reel last night. I don't know if you saw him get schmangled by Matthews there, but
Oh yeah, you're right. You're right.
I mean, I'm sure hopefully he can address that in the media. Just because that was nasty. His jock strap's going to be missing, so he better get a second one shipped to the Four Nations there.
Oh, geez, he's hugging that, hugging that. Well, either way, I do think that this Swedish team is going to be pretty good from the offensive outlook of it. I think you guys brought up some great points too. I do agree. It is weird that you select someone like Gustav Nyquist and Victor Arvidsson, two players that really stood out. Even Elias Lindholm, who hasn't had the best year. When you look at it as well, the biggest discussion that I have when I look at selecting a team is you need to create a hockey team. You need players that could be on the power play, on the penalties kill. You need a different aspect, different players that contribute different things to a team. It's very hard to bring the best players in, and that's the easiest thing to do when we were mocking pretty much our projected lineups. I do believe that they did a pretty good job selecting this team, but I think we can unanimously agree Victor Arvidsson shouldn't be on this team. Is that a fair take?
Yes,
Yeah,
I agree.
I'll take that. I like that take as well. Yeah, I think.
Anything on the defensive outlook for this team? Personally, I do think that bringing on a player like Jonas Brodin, Gustav Forsling, Rasmus Andersson, three very slept-on defensemen, led by Rasmus Dahlin as well. Very, very talented team.
Yeah, honestly, extremely. Yeah, you really have some underrated names there. In Forsling's a guy that most people didn't hear of till last year when he was led the league in plus minus. Rasmus Anderson as well, a guy who kind of just shines in Calgary despite their struggles. A lot of good names there for sure.
Perfect. So that is going to be it for Team Sweden. Any last minute takes? Where do we think that they end up? I'm personally going to have this Sweden team losing in the finals, and I'll get into who will beat them, but that's where I have Sweden.
I'll let Murray go.
Yep, I agree with Stance. I believe they will become the second place team. They'll lose in the finals, but I don't think they're good enough to win the tournament.
Honestly, I usually it's like I feel like us three never like agree on things. I'm gonna go the exact same way and say they're gonna finish in second.
Yeah, I think they're a very talented team. Another thing I want to get out to William Nylander down there at the bottom. I do think that he's going to have a great tournament, a very talented player. I think the puck's going to run through him in this tournament. He's going to be a lot of fun to watch. And I'm just excited in general to watch quote unquote best on best for these four nations. So that's going to be it for Sweden as we move on to Team USA. and a very, very flashy team off the rip. Like from all aspects, they had a lot of tough decisions, who they're going to take, who they're not going to take. I do think that US is going to be very talented, especially when we look at their net as well. The only issue for me and the biggest question before we get into their lineup is, do you think that Jake Oettinger will even start a game for this USA team? Because I don't think Swayman will even dress. I think he's going to hit the over on eating hot dogs in the stands for this tournament, and Connor Hellebuyck will carry this team to a very successful tournament. What do we think?
I think it depends. I think I would say yes that Oettinger will start a game. Uh, I actually think it depends on their schedule. If they come out hot and they play Canada the first game and Hellebuyck wins that game, like you're obviously going to stick with them unless you're 3-0 and you're playing like Finland or something who would be like the weakest team of the tournament, then you throw Ottinger in. But I think it just because like if Hellebuyck has a hot hand early, I don't think no one's going to see the net other than him. But if he that's in like a shaky start to Canada, let's say they lose like 3-1, I wouldn't be surprised if Ottinger gets the next game.
Pretty well said. I agree with everything that you were saying, except for the leading them to success part. I think Hellbuck's going to play every game, but I don't think he's going to get it done. I don't think that, I know it's a bit of a spoiler for me to say, but I don't think it'll be successful in
Save it,
those
save it,
words.
save it.
So,
No, I
all
do
right.
think, and I agree that it is a not, I mean, a problem, but it's tough when you have three really talented goaltenders in net because you almost need to say, all right, Hellebuck, you're our guy. Onger, take a seat. Swayman, pick out your three nicest suits because you're just going to be chilling and watching these games. I do think Hellebuck's going to start every game. One of the best goaltenders in the league right now. But for this tournament in general, and as we look at it, I do think it's just a matter of which team can get the hottest. And looking at the forward group, there's a lot of players that are playing some of their best hockey right now. Matt Boldy, Cal Connor, Jake Gensel, Jack Hughes, Jack Eichel, Austin Matthews, who just scored two awesome goals last night, Brady Tkachuk. Like there is just a flurry of offensive firepower on this team. One conversation that I wanted to have, who do you think in this group should not have been selected to the American team?
Um, I think like I'm not so sure there's guys on this roster like maybe Chris Kreider for sure. I don't know. I believe some other guys should have been picked before him, but I just don't think this is a good team. I think this is like more of a fantasy draft based on
Mhm.
skill. Th- and we'll get into my projection for this team, but I don't think it's going to work out. I think you have too many, not egos, but too many guys that need the puck, and too many guys that are going to be uncomfortable playing a different role, whether that's on the power play or just 5-on-5. Some guys playing the wing, and I just don't think it's going to work out. They're skilled for sure, might win a couple games, but I don't think they have enough to get it done.
I mean, when you have Austin Matthews headlining the cover there, I think it's easy to say the not getting it done part, and I agree with that as well. But for me, it's Brock Nelson, um, as the standout pick, where there's absolutely no rationale there for him making the team. I think it's just disrespectful in a sense, which I can get to that, but I don't want to get into too many details yet. But yeah, to answer your question, it's Brock Nelson.
Yeah, I mean, I do think Murray, like you said, this looks more like a fantasy draft than actual team. Like, imagine being Matthew, Brady, Kachuk,
Oh.
or even Jack Hughes and seeing people hop on the ice onto power play one and you're watching. It's very tough to do that. I do think that does have a little bit of challenge to it. I think that their power play is going to be absolutely phenomenal. Was there anything else offensively on this forward group that you guys had noted?
I think the one thing I actually noticed was um, with Boldy, I didn't realize how young Boldy was. I think that's a great pick, and I think if you weren't to take Boldy, you would have had to take a guy in a similar like age range, like a Caulfield or something. But again, they all can't make the roster. I think Boldy, again with that bit of like power forward to him, takes it, and it's just a great pick. So
Yeah, I think a very, very good offensive group. One thing that stood out to me was JT Miller getting selected, obviously deserving it, but if he will be back, I believe is the question. Could they maybe have some information where they know he won't be back. They're selecting him now because if there is someone injured when it comes to the February deadline, they can sub in for JT Miller. So if they are putting him on that roster, they are allowing themselves the flexibility to change their decision when it does come in February. Could that be something that the front office, the decision was made? I don't know. Is it a good strategy? I believe so. If JT Miller does play in this tournament, he will be a leading force to this USA team. I think we could all agree on that. But looking at the defensive roster before we move on to final team Canada, I do like this defensive roster. I love the players picked. I think that they went 7 for 7, just absolutely perfectly 7 picks. Faber, Fox, Hannafin, Quinn Hughes, Charlie McAvoy, Jacob Slavin, and the very talented Zach Werenski right now. Is there anything that you two had noted for this defensive core in for Team USA?
I have something noted for not only the defensive core but also the goalie core. And that is something that Eric brought up earlier. Cups, 0 cups,
Oh
Oh,
my
uh,
goodness.
0 cups from that whole defensive core, the
wow.
goalies,
I'm
and only
glad you
three
said it.
cups, 3 cups among their forward core. Now, I believe Canada has 5 cups only on their defensive core. 5 cups. So,
Oh.
I mean, it's just there's not enough leadership, I don't think, on this team. Too many young guns, too many guys that are going to be uncomfortable and have no idea how to play a different role. And if they don't get hot goaltending, this could turn really ugly for this team. That's my hot take.
You said it. I'm glad you mentioned that word cups. I would have forgot to bring it up at all. But there's so much I can say, but 100% with there being no cups on the back. And I think I was expecting you to say something about John Carlson just because you're a Caps fan. I think he's the only guy I really would have considered to replace one of those 7 defensemen, just because he is a right shot. But that being said, you have your McAvoy, Faber, and Fox as right shots, so I can see why you didn't make the team. But yeah, nothing too much else from me there.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think
look
it
at
was a go ahead, Murray.
I would say yeah, touching that Carlson point, like I don't think you can put him over Faber or McAvoy, but 100 like what has Adam Fox done? Like I'm sorry, like you already have he's not going to play the power play. Like I'm like Quinn Hughes is the quarterback, and then you're going to have you can throw Werenski or you have so many quarterback options on that power play. Adam Fox, he's undersized, like he's underperforming. Other than that 1 year he had on the Rangers, he hasn't really owned up to that since then, and obviously his Rangers aren't doing too well right now. So yeah, I feel like John Carlson, a Cup winner, a veteran presence on that decor could have definitely helped, but they're gonna see that that was a mistake.
Yeah, I know. I definitely agree. I think John Carlson could have been selected to this team, maybe over a player like Brock Faber, who I don't think has been playing that well this year, a little bit of a sophomore slump in a sense. I think this defensive core is very talented. 5 players that I'm looking at exclusively that do run the power play, I believe, on their respective teams. Brock Faber, Adam Fox, Quinn Hughes, Charlie McAvoy, and Zach Werenski, I believe, are all on the PP1. So considering Quinn Hughes will more than likely handle that power play, could that be a conversation and almost a little bit of a frustration for the other players? I think that this USA team could blow up very quickly and a slow 0 and start, or sorry, 0 and 2 start to the tournament could really make it interesting for them. I'm personally going to have them finishing as the third place team and not making it to the final. That's where I have Team USA.
I do as well. I have them finishing third.
My take is that they will be dead last. They will finish fourth,
Wow.
and they might if it gets off ugly. If they lose a game right away to like Finland, they're gonna not win one game.
Wow,
That's just how
interesting.
Team USA hockey plays in these international tournaments.
We'll
Wow.
see. We'll see,
I
right?
like it. I like it. Some really hot takes right now. We could look very interesting if we come back 3 months from now and they did win the tournament. But I personally think that we have the correct, good analysis to back up our statements here. So finally, we get to Team Canada. Oh, Canada, we are absolutely so dialed right now because we've been waiting months and months for this Team Canada roster. And we have about 6, 7 minutes to wrap up here with this Team Canada look. And personally, I love the roster that was picked. I know there was some notable discussions to be had. The first I wanted to bring up to you guys is the trio of Edmonton Oilers that were left off the team, that being Zach Hyman, Evan Bouchard, and Stuart Skinner. Do we think that that trio should have made the team? Do you think there was a discussion maybe with Connor McDavid that said, look, do you want them on the team? Do you not want them on the team? Because it's very surprising to think that there wasn't any discussion saying, hey, do you want Hyman as your line mate? And maybe he said, you know what? No, I want to play with a guy like Mitch Marner. What's your take on that trio being left out?
Go ahead, Eric.
It's a really good question. I think that Hyman is where the conversation could have really started, and I think outside of that, I don't think Bouchard would have really been brought up, or I think you said the third guy was Stuart Skinner, but I think Hyman would have been brought up several times, especially because a lot of people didn't know how what would happen with that little injury that was lingering, and no one knew how the season would start. So I think even summertime, that was probably a really serious conversation where McDavid was probably brought in at some point, but um, I don't think that it's a bad choice to leave them off. Just because again, you still have your Connor McDavid representing that Oilers team.
All right. Good takes. I first before I get into this, I want to shout out this guy in this tweet, in the subtweet there, the Falcon uh XT there with a clown comment. No Shifley, no Logan Thompson. I think that's a clown comment, just looking for attention. It just shows that no one's gonna be happy with the roster. Like no Logan Thompson, really, really. I think Sam Montembeault has absolutely outperformed him on a way worse team to earn that spot. But we'll get into that. I think when you look at this team. It's I like it, but I don't know. There's some spots like there's just like weakness. At forward depth, there's a lot of questions. But like Zach Hyman being left off that team is a great decision. I think he has 3 goals this season. And that's just because he was a merchant last year off McDavid. Like the only way he'd make the team, he had to be stuck to McDavid the whole time, or else he would not be fit in well with any other line. He's his whole career he's played with Matthews and then uh McDavid obviously. So and then Bouchard, you already have guys like everyone wants to say the Bouch bomb, but that's all he can really do. He can't play defense. You saw a game against Toronto a few weeks ago. It was just terrible. And you have guys like Cam Makar and Morrissey, Theodore who can play that power play. So he just wouldn't be needed. He'd be a liability on that back end. And
No,
Stuart Skinner is arguably one of the worst goalies in the league. I think I honestly think Jack Campbell is better than him. I don't think they should have gave up on him so quickly. It's just this is what happens when your team is carried by Darnell Nurse on the back end, um, and you expect McDavid and Draisaitl will be able to carry that load. They're gonna win games 5-4, 6-5. Stuart Skinner is gonna give up 5 goals on 18 shots, and he'll get the win somehow some nights, and that's how they got to the finals last year. And I guess you're seeing now this year. I mean, I had him in fantasy. You get the wins, but you'd also lose save percentage and goals against every week.
Not
yeah,
this week.
Hey, not this week, maybe, but I do believe I definitely agree with you regarding Stuart Skinner. An interesting point too that you brought up with Jack Campbell before we wrap up. Last year, I remember it was being reported that when Jack Campbell was waived and sent to the minors, they both weren't playing well, obviously, but it was reported that the only reason why Campbell was sent down to the minors was because they were scared that Stuart Skinner would get claimed by another team if he was sent down. So it was being reported that Stuart Skinner was the one that was supposed to be sent down. So a very awesome and crazy change of events for Stuart Skinner, but Jack Campbell obviously detrimental for his career. Just to think what it would have been like last year if Stuart Skinner got sent down and Jack Campbell kept playing and leading the Edmonton Oilers, where they would have ended up last year. But me personally, I do like this Team Canada team before we put them. And obviously, I guess it seems like we all have them winning the tournament, I believe, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh yeah.
Yes.
I was going to say, oh Canada, here we go. We
Oh,
all have
Canada.
them playing or sorry, playing in that gold medal game and ultimately winning it. So before we wrap up, who do we think gets the golden goal for Team Canada when they do win the Four Nations Cup?
Eric.
I'm just gonna go off like this is, just, so I don't second guess myself. I'm going Sam Reinhart.
I'm gonna go with a guy who I've actually been hating on
Oh,
a little bit too much. It's gonna be Anthony Cirelli. I think he's a guy that's gonna play his role the whole tournament, and then he's gonna get rewarded with the scrappy rebound goal at the end of the tournament.
nice. I love it. I mean, yeah, personally, I do like Sorelli. I think, and I'm going to agree with Eric Sam Reinhart. Last year, he had the game-winning goal in Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Finals. I think he could do it again. I think this team is going to be very talented. Canada, oh Canada, here we go. I do think they will win the tournament. It seems like everyone agrees with that. Any final points?
No, I think we wrapped up perfectly there.
Perfect. Well,
I have a 1 point.
oh, here we go.
This cup has a remarkable 17 cups, like at least
Ooh,
one. If you add
wow.
Crosby's numerous cups to even more, the 9 cups are on this forward group. Look at that back end. Obviously, Aiden Hill and Bennington have both won cups. These guys all know what it's like to be get it done, and that's gonna be the difference at the end. And they're led by like Crosby's still playing remarkable for his age. He should be the captain, or else I'll crash out. And yeah, that's my final thoughts.
A little bit of technical difficulties there. No worries though. And just to wrap up here, we do have Team Canada winning the Four Nations Faceoff. I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be a lot of fun. I do think this team is very strong. I do think Finland's going to be a sleeper team, and the US is going to be the disappointment of the tournament. It's going to be a very interesting tournament, and I can't wait. Another point that I want to bring up before we wrap is that it looks like hopefully Upper Deck will be working on some Four Nation face-off cards. I know we are always trying to incorporate the conversation of sports cards, so that's going to be a lot of fun.
Oh
Hopefully,
yeah.
when those cards do come out following the tournament, all those game use patches, maybe with the logo there on the chest, it will be a very exciting tournament for all hockey fans. So I'm most definitely fired up for it.
Oh, that's a good point. I didn't know that. That's is that confirmed too? They'll be kind of like working on it once the
Confirmed, unconfirmed NHLPA event. So,
Okay, that is pretty interesting. Yeah, just because I have noticed there's not obviously NHL logos being used, but obviously if there's sponsors like Upper Deck, it's going to make it a way better tournament. So
okay,
yeah.
perfect. So, as to wrap up, it was an awesome pod, Murray. I appreciate you joining. Hopefully, we could have you on for more future pods because I think you brought a lot of good discussion, and I'm sure a lot of the listeners will agree with that. It was a lot of fun today, and thank you, boys, for listening. Really had a lot of fun, and we'll chat soon.